It's keeps giving me this Zoom message. Please ask the host to give you permission.
No,
Maybe I'm not the host.
I don't know about that. You can just record. You started the meeting, so you should be able to control that.
Right. I'm not sure. See if I go back to the Zoom.
If you want, I can send you my my recording. So,
sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that works.
So, where do we start?
So I have this link. I think I emailed it to you.
Yeah.
I'll send it in the chat. There we go. Open house party, 8083 meeting. Yeah. I don't know where to start, but that's where I should start.
Let's see, but I gotta sign in though.
Okay.
Why? How about? Can I just?
You can look at it. Well,
somehow it's getting me a sign-in thing. Before it didn't do it.
Okay, let me just make it a public.
Yeah, just make it public.
Settings. No, it says it's public.
It does?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I gotta... No.
Meetings.
I gotta sign up for a new account, though. Is there any other way to view it, or...?
I am going to copy all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
Because it's in the email, too.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't you just paste it into the chat so we can take a look at...
There we go.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I guess what I had is for like 2022 respective organization updates. I don't know if you want to go first or me.
Yeah, so... Yeah. Quick update. We've been working on a CD home all year up until a build in December. So December 8th, we started a build of 2 houses. We got one pretty much framed up. The second one just the foundation. We've got a bunch of house modules, but basically those are two houses that we're finishing now and putting on a market to prove the economic model of the CD home. So this is now not just our builds on site for just education purposes. This is for real clients and developing a revenue model. So that's where we're at, and that's a very exciting time, and look forward to those being finished up. Ideally, our goal right now is March 1st. It's on the market and it's possibly sold.
Cool.
Yeah.
For me, last year I was pushing to do some YouTube video content and some podcast stuff. I'm kind of just starting it back up again. I got a promotion at work, and it means about the same pay for now while I'm in training, but less demands on my body, so I have more energy. So that's awesome. I'm working as an electrician.
Electrician?
Yes.
Did you actually go to tech school for electrician, or?
No, I went to school for electrical engineering, and I got my power certificate, but things weren't quite panning up. I had some health issues, and my GPA dropped a bit. I decided I want to do some stuff on my own, and I wanted to kind of do what you were doing with open source hardware technology, because I think that's really amazing that you can connect with people internationally via social media and work on similar projects. And I kind of I formed my own nonprofit and for-profit open house party, chassis, and I've been kind of incrementally working on it as I am able to. So I guess for some updates for 2022, one big one is I got a big piece of machinery for my for-profit, the professional shredder for the precious plastic equipment. I ran into some issues with that, but it's been resolved. I'm ordered my XL extruder as well, and so that's going to be shipped in probably the next couple months or so. I still got to buy some more molds I want to do, but what I've already paid for includes the brick mold, and he had a new design. And I was kind of curious how it might relate to what you're doing with the house builds, because I know you said you're trying to do some plastic construction for
yeah. So this is injection molded?
It's going to be injected using the XL extruder into the mold. So yes, injection molding.
Yeah. For us, it's about 3D printing. So shredding. So shredder is the common tool, not the injection part. we're just going with 3D printing as a more versatile way to do things. So the goal here is to shred waste plastic and mix it probably with like 30% sawdust to make it kind of wood-like filament, and print from there. But things like the block, you can do that by extrusion or by printing. For us, it would be by printing. Like what we envision right now, immediately what we can do with 3D printing is certain parts that are all kinds of non-structural or geometric parts that fit within the wall modules. Like for example, if we're doing a plumbing electrical integration, 3D printing holders for PEX fittings so that they would be, imagine for example we've got a wall module, we still do the 4x8, 4x9 modules in real life size, 4x9 feet. And then you have a locating piece that you would put somewhere on the module, which would say be annotated, like, okay, put this at coordinate XY on the module, and therefore it will be part of the water system, because then your plumbing fittings go into that. So basically like holders and geometrical parts, as well as tons of other things like blocking, various wood that goes not maybe into the structural part, but all kinds of blocking, and of which there's like 30% of the lumber is blocking. It's non-structural. So with 3D printing, say you take it from the waste stream, mix it with some wood sawdust, things like that, you can talk about actual 30% of actual lumber displacement. And this is not to mention things like PVC for plumbing, electrical, all kinds of geometries, trim. I mean, trim is an expensive thing that we can definitely print, and it's non-structural. Roofing materials, forms for foundations, you name it. Windows, 3D print your geometries and then put in like double glazing and seal that to have professional grade windows. All kinds of stuff with 3D printing. So that's why we want to go for the 3D printing part, not the injection molding, because it just gives us the flexibility. Yeah, but the common part, I mean, so the bottom line, I mentioned last year we did the the proof of concept of the economic model. We're working on it still, but the number one thing is to get some kind of a product. So you asked about collaboration in your email. How do we work together? Something that is replicable, that is an important product, like the bricks. I mean, it could be an important thing. I'm not sure if the injection molding is the route to do it. I personally think that the 3D printing part is more versatile, because the same machine can do a bunch of other things and stuff like that. Otherwise, you have to have very specific molds for each thing. And but the common ground is, what can we talk about, focus the discussion around creating as a product, some subsystem or anything that actually makes sense. You mentioned
now something I want to interject with you on, being that you're an open source organization, I am sure you're aware that there's a bit of a step and process going from idea to production beta to stable production. And even in my line of work, it's sometimes hard to get people on similar projects, working on the same project eventually, on the same page and synchronize. At work, we have like an SAP system. I'll only talk limited about that, but I'm trying to do something similar with Open Project, and also kind of replicating what you were doing with the wiki part of your website.
Yeah.
So a big part of documentation, I know for you, it's a struggle. It is for most everyone. But if you can, at phases of your development, even if it doesn't pan out production-wise, just showcasing what steps you're progressing with, and having it so it's publicly accessible and easily to access. With Open Project, I still need to learn about versioning and assigning work packages. But my goal is, as I'm kind of assimilating my own repository that acknowledges organizations like yours with Open Source Ecology and Open Building Institute, others like WikiHouse, I want to acknowledge what developments organizations are doing, and being able to, upon interest, someone to expand further into that and to raise issues or concerns, progressions. But that way, it provides an opportunity for, say, someone else to pick up the baton and progress a bit further, hopefully in the public domain. I know you have a lot on your plate, and sometimes it's hard to keep up with the documentation. But if you can make it so it's easy for you to publish some of your main progressions by month, and allow people to acknowledge what you've done and build off of that as derivatives, like WikiHouse, for example, I think it'd be easier for someone like me to be like, cool, Martian, this is what you've done for the month, and this relates to what I'm interested in, and this is how I want to kind of push it forward with my own unique interests. So just making it openly organic, where it's easier for someone to pick up the baton and progress further with it. So, like for example, you might be working on 3D printing. I know in my case, where it's cold, I had to learn the hard way that I could produce some stuff with a 3D printer I bought, but until I got an enclosed chamber, I wasn't able to successfully make a good product. You run into some of those issues. But if you can like create a better user interface for someone to find out what subcategory project you're working on, and it relates to what they're doing, then hopefully you make it in a format so someone else can pick up the baton from anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
So that way you don't necessarily have to drive it solely yourself, but it's easier for someone else like myself or others to pick up your public works and take it a bit further as it's more in demand in my case or another person's case. If that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's a central question of open hardware, and that's a huge effort. We do have everything that we record. Let me just share the screen. Like for example, okay, can you enable share screen?
Oh, I didn't realize I had disabled share screen. Host disabled participant screen sharing. Maybe I should find a different video chat. So I don't know why you're restricted in all these cases.
Yeah, I think that's the default. Starts with.
I'm wondering if Zoom just wants money, or if I was at long enough. I'll launch the meeting again.
What you said, I mean, that's the central question. Believe it or not, we all have it. We use the wiki and we use GitLab, GitHub. We use the wiki itself as repos, and it's actually all tracked under our development templates and CAD repositories. We have all of that. The next question is, how do people understand the development process methodology so that they can actually understand, and once they see it, they say, oh yeah, that's it, and then it can go further. So to me, it's actually the bigger question is one of culture
and engagement.
Yeah, you can say that. Well, but anyway, like what I was going to show you on the screen was the CAD master files repository. Like you have all the details. You've got the entire structure. You've got the plumbing system, electrical, the PV system, everything. I mean, we have everything. I mean, we've got the best.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of it on your website, but sometimes it's been hard to find your most up-to-date, like LifeTrack progress or their brick press or some others. Others could seem a bit scattered. And I know in my progression in documentation for the last few years, and to date, my stuff is still a bit scattered. With Open Project, I'm getting a bit more organized and categorized. But also I'm kind of setting up like Jellyfin for like a video recordings centralized. But I want to have like go-to links people can go to be updated in like what my progression is. And hey, these are my sources. I am sourcing open source ecology. I'm sourcing WikiHouse. I'm sourcing this YouTube channel. If people want to search further in my references, that makes sense.
Of course.
Like in academic publishing, you want to have good, healthy, credible, solid references. So you're relying on other people of high professional credible value and to substantiate your work.
Yeah.
So similar with open source ecology, as I'm sure you're aware of, the more you can have people they can defer or delegate to who are better at their niche and are willing to progress and share that public knowledge, it makes it a lot easier for some of your projects, I'm presuming.
Of course.
Like I'm referencing a lot of your works and a lot of WikiHouse as well. Thingiverse, different communities on Thingiverse. For like CNC hardware. So that's kind of where I wanted to acknowledge, like somewhere later in my agenda is you have your mission focus and then I have my mission focus. We're both open source based. You have a much longer track record than I do. But I want to also acknowledge like some of the support systems I have and doing my own developments of interest, but seeing where like where there's interlap. So if like you're doing the house stuff, if I'm able to manufacture, say, the plastic with 3D printers or injection molding at a faster rate with some of the equipment, then that might be of use to you.
Yeah.
Or if you make developments in your housing designs, or WikiHouse does, I can refer to your designs and make scale models of stuff as I build up my equipment and materials, so I'm not over-leveraged in debt. And I'm using the for-profit side because that way I can account for that debt. The nonprofit, I don't want to do any debt-based stuff. And I want to be more community-focused on the nonprofit engaging with people like you online,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe WikiHouse founders or other people doing similar derivative work.
Yeah.
Because either way, with WikiHouse or open source ecology, Seed EcoHome, you guys are both have your installation, your electrical work, and your plumbing work, and each have your own libraries or ways of that inner development. And so I want to refer to like both of those your organization, WikiHouse, for example, for some of those finer details that you have your own community backing around. And I can acknowledge that with what I'm doing. I really wish I could share your screen, um, but like I said, I have these topics listed. I can't remember if you wanted to pick it up with what you were talking about, or
Yeah. No, the documentation part is absolutely right. That's has not been figured out, and yeah. And at the end of the day, our latest learning is that the way to make this move forward, just like has happened in software, with Linux in a couple of years since around 1991, there was a minimum viable product, and for us, we're thinking is the same right now. What's the minimum viable product that can bootstrap some economics and therefore make the project grow?
I want to touch another basis. I noticed it a bit in your documentation as well, but like in my case, I'm wanting to focus on well-being and related to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and one of them being housing is like kind of a more base need. And so I'm trying to acknowledge open source projects kind of based on that core base level of the Maslow's hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And so people can get around like with affordable housing for sure. And maybe eventually, if you got big enough, maybe you could look into something with utilities or repairs of I don't know like urban development, or just like if you use like open source hardware designs for meeting like basic utility type needs, whether it be plumbing, toilet stuff, or whether it be like some electrical stuff like you've kind of been doing to some degree, but just where people can pick up your designs for public works and improve that base utility as far as like with the household and well-being and other categories. But we're focused more so on the hardware of database intellectual property of sorts.
Right.
But kind of just acknowledge that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because if you can do things that are of service to what people's core base needs are in a better way, then more people I feel are willing to engage with, oh, this is really cool. Like you're saying I can build like a scale model house and then eventually build up to a full scale house. Like I don't know if I want to do that myself, but if you get to like a shed scale stuff, then like yeah, like I'd be willing to pay for that.
That's exactly the reason. The basic hierarchy of needs is exactly the reason why we shifted fully to the Seed EcoHome, because it's the number one cost in anyone's life. So that's the biggest impact that we can have. And then it also builds upon the open source machines, the 3D printing and ecological stuff and everything, the whole product ecology of everything.
And something else I've learned is like with open source projects, sometimes there's another organization or company that publishes their works that might be a bit better performing. And with like an open project, I haven't fully utilized versioning, but for example, I like to version like the developments of your Seed EcoHome. I also like to version some of the different models of WikiHouse, and with like my own program, like kind of encapsulate those two in my own derivatives, but acknowledge some of those upgrades every so many years. Whether it be housing, whether it be CNC machining equipment, or 3D printers, you and I have a preference towards the open source domain of hardware. And so if we can acknowledge some of those public developments that are creating a new standard, like it'd be better to refer to those better standards. With the CNC example, I haven't fully put together my lowrider CNC, and since then they have a lowrider 2 for V1 engineering, and now they have a lowrider 3. Each time it keeps getting better and better for like a full upgrade. And I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can just defer to another company or organization that focuses on that niche, and they just so happen to have things open source. So it's like, definitely acknowledging people you can defer to who are doing their own unique niche that complements what you're doing.
Yeah,
so you don't have to do everything, but you can be like, no, this guy I know overseas, he's really good at this, and we can utilize this in the Seed EcoHome design. Or this guy here, he needs to make a living, and he's really part of what we're doing. He can help us with a lot of marketing, but he doesn't have to work at our location. He can work remotely, and that sort. Mm-hmm. So makes things more convenient for people to better help themselves, but further develop your open source progression of things being in the public domain.
Regarding the prior art, the single, perhaps most important page is the genealogies page. So on that, which I put it into the chat, is if you click on any genealogy, like for example for the 3D printer, you'll have like 30 versions of the printer that we already did. So you can trace every single development. Everything is described, and you can say, okay, this is what we did in version 1 and 2. We did this, and 3 we did so forth, and you kind of have to piece it together. But the point is, all the data that we have is, or just as much as we can, is up there, pictures and everything else. Now, a whole new layer could be that documentation and versioning and all of that layer, which is based on, here's the core data set, now you can organize it as you want, and that platform is yet to be developed.
Okay. That's something I'd be interested in doing with one of my colleagues.
Yeah.
As I'm kind of doing my own scale model house builds. I don't want to over leverage my for-profit with the debt. I want to have my equipment kind of pay for itself over time. But just some kind of passion project for me is acknowledging like the work that you're doing and how I can utilize that to build like a scale model of your CD Home or the WikiHouse models.
Mm-hmm.
I've so far made models of the WikiHouse, a dog house size and a birdhouse size for cost reasons. I'm trying to do a shed scale model and a full scale model I have the designs for, but it's been a little challenging to find a manufacturer because they have a certain standard of engineering drawings that they demand. And so right now I'm just waiting to hear back from a community member online to that I could pay more for him to do some further design work to meet these engineering standards for production that the production people want.
Are you using FreeCAD?
I am trying to utilize FreeCAD. Well, I'm keeping things in the DXF files. So when I paid a guy from Europe, he kept things as a DXF file, but a lot of the engineers I've gone to or the manufacturers, they want specific engineering drawings. And so each time I scale the models up, for say, example, WikiHouse, the interlocking mechanisms of WikiHouse is based off a certain thickness of material. And so each time I've gone up into standard, it's been from like say, 1/16 I think was the birdhouse, 1/8 has been like the doghouse scale, and then I'm going all the way to a 1/2 inch thickness for the shed, and then the full scale is 3/4 inch thickness. So when I jumped from that 1/8 to 1/2 inch, I had to quadruple the thickness and the dimensions. And so I paid someone to provide the DXF files now. Unfortunately, the manufacturers also want engineering drawings to go with that, which does not meet their with what WikiHouse has does not meet their standards. So I need to pay him to or my designer to take each panel. So there's like 40-some sheets of like plywood designs that are modified to fit for that scale production. So I need him to take the DXF files and provide the schematic of cutting drawings that they want. And they have different CAD file systems. So the challenge is like he has to go through the process of either utilizing that advanced software technology, the Go proprietary version, to provide that schematic or layout drawing that they want. But ideally, I still prefer to have things accessible in FreeCAD. So some of the designs might be modified in a professional grade piece of machine software to manufacture the design schematics to whatever preferences. But I'm really trying to push to keep things in like a FreeCAD compatible design format.
My suggestion is to invest that money into those workbenches within FreeCAD. So, for example, the way we did the CEB press, we have the model in FreeCAD, and then we simply export the DXFs. And you can scale things up and down in FreeCAD. So I would suggest that because that way you can get universal participation across the globe without expensive software. Now, the second part is for the workbench idea within FreeCAD. There's already a workbench that, for example, does like sheet metal, so it can export you the DXFs for sheet metal cutting and things like that. If we invest in
chat, send me a message of those workbenches. I'd like to take note of those workbenches.
Okay, like sheet metal workbench. I haven't looked at it in, I don't know if it's under development, but I know it was, for example, workbench FreeCAD. Okay, there's, for example, one from 2020, so take a look at this one. But the deal is, and that's what maybe if you talk about a point of collaboration, there's Sweet Home 3D, which is widely accessible, and then there's FreeCAD. In FreeCAD, we already have done things like dedicated workbenches where you can design things. So you basically click on a button, okay, draw the frame, draw whatever, like for the 3D printer. We did that already. We have a very basic version of that. So use the advantage of FreeCAD, which allows you to do that openly and then change those designs and have an easy user interface that anyone in the world can use. I would really suggest doing that, because that way you're investing for everybody, not some people who have the software.
Right. It's just like the schematic designs that the production people want had to meet a certain certain standard, and I was trying to defer to my designer, who's part of the WikiHouse community. I'm not sure which software he is using at the moment, but I've just kind of been deferring to him because he was willing to take on the project, and he was already doing his own business production of the full-scale model, which he was actually kind of arguing with some of the other manufacturers, because it's like, no, all you need is the DXF file and just to put it into machine code. But they want more specific engineering dimensions, which are different for the scale model. So it requires a bit more annotation work for each like scale from.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but FreeCAD has the full BIM integration, building information modeling integration. In fact, FreeCAD is some of the best practice in the ability to open the universal BIM format, building information modeling. So I would actually strongly suggest bypassing all these discussions, going to developing FreeCAD for those capacities. I mean, we're doing that. Definitely working with a FreeCAD. Let me send you a link to the one about architecture.
I'm gonna tinker around with this in my free time, but sometimes I don't necessarily always have enough free time to do a full development of this. So I myself also prefer to defer to someone else to maybe provide like a presentation or just something to expand upon what their knowledge is. So if you have any recommendations for experts, I don't know if Jan or one of the guys you had at the Vehicle CAD workshop you did, I think he was pretty well versed in FreeCAD. And then there's some other names I think I've seen who are like big developers with FreeCAD. But it would be worth it for me just to pay some expert in that area of FreeCAD specialist to do the work, but also keep in the public domain and publish their work. And that's something I'd be willing to fund them for as like a public kind of invoice type thing. Because that way it would help me get up to speed. It would provide some public knowledge on that. It also kind of advance the workspace field. That's something I will be willing to put money down, because it's, you know how it is, sometimes you got to weigh like time and money of sorts, and so like I'd like to tinker with that myself, but I feel like it would be much more quickly up to speed if I could pay like an expert to do some of that development, and then I could refer it later with my own derivatives.
Yeah.
So if any names come to mind, I would appreciate
definitely. I mean, just look at, okay, let me send you this page and look at any names referenced. Immediately come to mind people like Yorick, one of the founders.
Yes.
There's, forget who some of the other names are. Duncan, Malt, Yorick, Regis, Ryan, and opening detail. There's people. Okay, so
some of those are familiar names.
Here, take a look at this page, and look at that page also regarding other means to, because one of the big deals is how do you generate all the architecture documents for submitting to a building department, if that's what you're doing. And
I was actually submitting it to a manufacturer, not a building department, for the WikiHouse stuff.
Yeah.
I guess I could consider building department, but I've kind of just been going at it as I've had the funds. That's something I'd be willing to do, like kind of like a marketing campaign to do. Like if I can get some funding, I'd find some local people or pay someone internationally and like kind of carry that baton forward of sorts.
Yeah, like Europe has done the extraction of DXF cutting panels from FreeCAD models. You know that?
I did not know that.
Okay, take a look at that page, the architecture documents. There's an example there which shows how he's got a 3D model, and then he's actually getting the two-dimensional DXFs out of that. So if you just scroll through that after we talk. Take a look at that page. It's a good page because
It is a
there's
very
so
good
many
page.
really good resources there. As far as BIM goes, FreeCAD is up there in the echelons.
Yes. Cool. Yep. I see his name. York Duncan Moltz.
Mhm.
Cool. You got to make sure I
Yeah.
save. Well, if I'm not recording it, I want to save all this chat stuff. Actually, if you save it, then hopefully you can
I
just
am-
submit it.
Yeah, I'm recording this so you can also.
I'm going to try to find my Mega server link. If you could maybe upload it to that link, that way it's like a company and it should be a faster upload speed. But anyway, just if you want to look at that agenda and see what's next, I'm trying to open up the Mega file, or Mega source. Mega.
I'm actually recording some of this, and I'll put this on a wiki page and all that, and copy and paste all these links here. For the CD home, with the current model, we're doing a really complete final model that we will have. I mean, we have one already that's pretty much version that was valid until like December, and in December we decided to change from 1,000 square feet to 1,300 square feet because there was so much more interest in 1,300 square feet. So we're migrating from the 1,000 square foot is still a core module, which you can do. For example, you can do a 2,000 square foot with two of those modules next to each other. But the 1,300 for the single house is very important. Like, for example, in town, basically people told us if you do 1,000, you're not going to sell it. If you do 1,300, you are going to sell it. I mean,
Exactly.
And it's like, okay, we'll listen to that.
Yes.
So that's regarding the scale models. I could see a great, enterprise or side project or educational thing where people can actually buy or make these kits to practice building them. You know, like you would do in real life. So what's next?
Sorry, I'm still trying to get a link to share with you. Making sure it's not.
Any economic modeling? Are you doing any economic modeling of what viable financial models look like?
I have not gotten to that point yet. I've kind of just been winging it, trying to get production, and then showcasing marketing recordings kind of like this. Or what's really cool is when people see like the laser cutting or CNC cutting. There's more marketing I can do like this, where I record it and I publish it onto YouTube, or just engage with people on the online communities, the better. And what I want to do is once I can build up an audience, up engagement, then I can get feedback and be like, hey, this is what I'm doing with this repository, these housing design models I'm developing further, and this actual scale model production. If you guys are interested in me talking about how to produce this stuff, how to finance it with like a Roth IRA, or leverage a 401k loan to finance some of this stuff, or something relevant to affordable housing development, then consider like financing me or promoting one of my workshops. And then if I raise enough funds, then I'll do a production run.
Yeah.
And on the nonprofit side, I only care that I meet expenses. Similar with the for-profit side, is that if I, like say with recycling plastic or other materials with equipment, if I can get to a point where I can like pay off the equipment, then that's awesome for me. Because that way, with the for-profit, I can manufacture like my own home estate. With the nonprofit, like as long as I'm building up my repository and I'm acknowledging like insecurities or just stuff that I want to see developed further with my time, then that gives me a sense of fulfillment. And if I'm able to engage with people like you or other people with the online international community, who I just resonate and get along well with, then for me, I find meaning in that, and I find fulfillment, and
Yep.
it brings me a better peace of mind.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so with the workshops, that's where I really want to put myself online, like with this, engage in like what I'm doing, and just to find interest and get that feedback to see, hey, are people willing to like finance me or promote what I'm doing as like a public works?
Mm-hmm.
And if things become really take off on the for-profit side with my time, I could do maybe some more customized work with either the housing side of stuff or
Mm-hmm.
else with the
Yeah.
chassis, the house chassis, car chassis type stuff, toy model based stuff. But the for-profit is where I really want to do scale model production and build up. It'd be cool on the for-profit side to, for example, to manufacture some CNC machinery or like a laser saw, laser duo equipment. That's part of the Creative Commons. Because for the laser cutter, for example, right now I'm trying to finance a truck, but if I can like say manufacture a laser cutter, I could manufacture maybe two of those. I could keep one of them, but I could sell like the other one for profit, and I could also develop further documentation on how to actually manufacture it yourself.
Of course.
It's an open source project,
Mm-hmm.
but that's a bit more money privately focused because it's a bit more capital intensive, and there's that risk for me at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a nonprofit, so far, I'm kind of mirroring what you and WikiHouse are doing, and finding some things with financing and other public books, and create my own kind of cookie cutter collection of like how to build or manufacture, create your own affordable housing, and the different routes you can take. Because some cases it's better to build, in other cases it's just better to buy what's on market. But I do notice that obviously if you buy an old house, you're going to have all these issues you have to finance and pay for. So it's easier for me to kind of build things up with the data side or the documentation. And on the for-profit side, if I can recycle materials and build up my own capital, that's stuff that I can more so keep with like tax write-offs and capital expenditures. So when I sell stuff, like I get to write off like the tax write-off. So I'm keeping the material into a new usable form as CNC machinery or building my own home estate. In contrast with the depreciation of U.S. currency and dollars and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Trying to think, but yeah, I need to look at more of some of this stuff you're sending me. Let's
Yeah,
see if
for
I
the
can.
I sent you the last link is the Citica Home V2. In the info box on the right hand side, it talks about that's our model that was like our proof of concept for the technology, and the Citica Home 4 is the actual first production model out in the real world. So there's a link to the Citica Home 4 there as well. And I mean, it's a hyperlinked spreadsheet of content. I mean, there's thousands of pages under that. So if you talk about
Right.
documentation, go ahead.
Well, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to encapsulate projects. So for example, like I'm trying. Well, I think I did already kind of take a mirror of or a copy or clone of what you got so far with your repository at one point in time. But I wanted to acknowledge that in like open source ecology repository, and then over time I want to get more familiar with like what projects you've done so far, which ones have like high utility for like making scale model houses. I know you've done the brick to an extent, but it didn't meet your production expectations in some ways. But then there's also 3D printing and injection molding. And so for me, I'm kind of trying to experiment and see which ones have the highest utility once manufactured or ease of like assembling. And then just acknowledging like this one's one that I find useful or relevant. Or for example, like with V1 Engineering, he has MPCNC and Lowrider CNC, and like this is the machine I'm using, and then this is the new version of that, and acknowledging what improvements there are, whether it be of that same company, organization, or product, or like even with your organization, you guys have your modularity and expandability, and so the documentation. WikiHouse has their kind of own way of doing things, and there's parts of things I like about WikiHouse a lot better, and there's parts of things I like about your organization a lot better. And so just acknowledging more so that your unique strengths in each case, and where so there might be some complementary work. For your example, I think you have maybe some better documentation with the modules, with the electrical setup and the plumbing systems. Um,
Oh, you muted me.
Okay, I'm back.
Yep.
And I think I claimed the host status. Yes, I did. So I'm going to record right now.
This meeting is being
Okay, can you hear
recorded.
me?
Yep.
I can't hear you yet. You're on mute.
How about now?
Awesome. And I'm recording this time.
Wow.
I don't have our chat conversation. Hopefully you got that.
Yeah, I've got it on.
Awesome. I didn't realize I had to click the claim host position. Okay. So as I was saying, like WikiHouse, I really before you had your up-to-date documentation, which I still have to get more familiar with, because I know you guys are still doing a bit of development for ease of like getting up to speed. With WikiHouse, I really appreciated their manufacturing files. It was easy access and utilizing right away. With yours, you've been developing your FreeCAD stuff, but you have your library modules pretty well set. WikiHouse was having some trouble getting their libraries 2 years ago, 1 year ago. But I'm not as familiar with their plumbing and electrical layout. I'm gonna plug in my laptop. So anyways, like and actually, I guess since I'm focusing on your organization with open source ecology, I'd really like to get more up to date with like your libraries, with the housing, with electrical work and the plumbing, and how.
Share the screen. Can you let me share the screen? I can walk you through it.
Let's see. There's the chat. Share screen. Or wait, no, that's sharing my screen. I'm not sure how I let you share your own
There's
screen.
probably a hamburger menu next to share screen or something or more.
Multiple participants can share simultaneously. There we go.
All right, got it. So if you look at this, the last complete documentation was under Seagull Home 2. Now, I'll just walk you through how you can find it on the wiki. So the page called Genealogies will take you to everything that we've done for the last 15 years. Microhouse is the way we started this project here, so we've done a bunch of stuff on that, starting with the Earthbag Hut, Cordwood, Original Workshop, blah, 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 Microhouses, Seed Homes, up to Seed Home 4. Now, Seed Home 2 is the most well-documented one, and if you, for example, look at the CAD, you'll see complete part libraries, like there's master files, entire, I mean, this is like about a year's of work in this single file right there.
I'm gonna stop you right there.
Yep.
But there was like for my YouTube videos, like I'd be willing to like kind of explore like your libraries and just as I utilize them for some scale model production.
Yeah.
At some point, I would like to try to 3D print them with my 3D printers or have them manufactured. I'm not sure which route is. I think you were saying you prefer 3D printing, but just I want to kind of walk through the process on my own at some point as far as the developments you're doing, as well as with what I'm currently doing with WikiHouse. And acknowledge the developments you're doing, because that's something I'd like to replicate myself in my own program.
Yeah, yep. So to continue, let's see if we can get you down that road. So this is the Seed Home 2, and now there's a link to the completion status there. It was built and under testing. Seed Home 4 is the next one. So then once again, you got things like the CAD, where a lot of this CAD is pretty much taken forward from the last versions. But now if you talk about, okay, here's the water system or plumbing, I mean, these are exhaustive files. It's pretty much exhaustive detail. So you can actually look at the working doc for each of those. Like the working doc, that'll take you through like hundreds of pages of detail of exactly what we've done in a modular way. And if you can combine, like some of the very important stuff is things like these visual bills of materials where these things are, for example, all hyperlinked in this working doc to show you the actual parts and all that. So you can correlate the diagrams, the BOMs, which are clickable, and CAD completely to get yourself a picture of what the whole thing looks like. So that's, for example, for the plumbing. Similar goes for the water, and then, for example, for electrical, man, this is exhaustive detail too. Like this doc here, right here, I mean, that's going to be like hundreds of pages, but once again, you have exhaustive breakdown down to every single box. You got your PV design. You got things like.
I'm gonna slow you down, but a big thing I want to do with like my own program is I want to encapsulate like what you're doing, because I can get a bit of overwhelm when there's just so much information, good information, but a lot of information. And if I can like say one episode a week, go like, okay, today I'm talking about this cool organization, open source ecology, and their building modules. I could spend probably a whole video talking about your genealogy and contrasting it with what I'm trying to do with versioning and just encapsulating it, because it's very easy to be overblown with all the information. But if I can just focus on a small encapsulated piece of it, promote it online, engage with people, then maybe someone like knows a home builder or this or that, or people can kind of just talk and discuss about it.
Yeah,
So they're going to do their own stuff that's related.
Yeah.
And so the next week I can post a bit more in detail, like, okay, now there's these subcategories of your electrical work and your plumbing, and what I like about it, how it contrasts with WikiHouse, another nonprofit. And then someone chimes in like, oh yeah, like we saw your video and we actually did our own thing with plumbing. Like you should be doing this and that. I was like, okay, that's cool, yeah, and yeah, that totally makes sense. And like, actually, that's better than what WikiHouse currently has. So I like how WikiHouse has it easy for production, but open source ecology has this really good documentation with plumbing, and these plumbers seem to be really able to expand on it further. Whereas that's kind of past my knowledge base, but someone else can kind of pick up the pieces and make it more relevant, and I can learn from them and re-encapsulate it, synergize back into the project.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay, I'm gonna let you go back to talking. Sorry.
Exactly. That's the process.
Because I'm going to chime in again. I just know for myself and for other people, we can get easily overblown. But if you can hold on to a chunk of it, the other people can further expand on references. It just makes encapsulation easier to digest.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course. So how do you find the latest work on the project then? This is your pop quiz. If I were to
Genealogy.
leave you right now. Okay, yeah, okay.
I have hyperlinked to your recent
Good.
changes wiki page.
All right.
I try to stay up to date on that, but
Yeah.
I have not expanded upon your genealogy, which I'm going to explore later
Okay.
and contrast it.
And you can have a whole session on each of these projects, which each of these projects is like a decade of work in it. So,
Yeah.
Microhouse, so last was, and you can see this, the last thing, latest on top, CD Go Home 4. So what I would suggest is you go to the first place you click is on the CAD, because that's the ultimate source of truth. It's like, okay, this is actually what is designed. So the master files are the best place to go to, like master files. And so here was the electrical that I was referring you to. And in this working doc, you've got a lot of the detail. But for example, like down to every single box being explicitly listed and mapped out. Like, here's all the circuits mapped out completely. Here's like the whole first floor with all the boxes and outlets and things and lights.
I'm not sure if you're sharing your screen, but I don't see your screen share.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay, I was trying to follow along on my. Okay.
Right, so electrical, I took you to this page where it's like every single box, for example, for the first floor is delineated here. So there's excruciating technical detail of how everything is wired for the entire thing. So you can study this for a week and actually understand the whole system if you didn't know anything. Like, we're literally listing every single box and where it goes. And it's also fully available within the CAD model. So if you download this right here, this is on GitLab, you'll see every single one of those boxes. You can correlate it to the reality. You can correlate it to the BOMs.
I'd like to make an interjection. At work, I work at Conagra Brands. I don't want to go too far into detail, but they use PLC systems. And I was like, oh, you guys know there's like this cool open source technology? And I refer to like open PLCs just as kind of a reference base, which is quite a bit different compared to industrial standards. But I wanted to see what utility there might be with OpenPLC as far as with open forum type stuff. So where I'm of interest is if I were to take, say, your modules with electrical modules and also expand upon your building modules. If I were to say make a scale model of your household, it'd be kind of cool to do one house module kit for like the bathroom, one module house kit for the kitchen, and kind of see what work you have with there and contrast it with maybe some open PLC designs, and just kind of play around with that. I don't have to go too far into detail with it, but just kind of play around with it and see what interest I gain with the online audience and community, if that makes sense. But that's something I'd be very intrigued by because I'd be getting more familiar with PLC systems, the open source community-based one, which is a bit different than industrial grade, but still like it creates an open platform or open source of development to expand upon both synergistically and complementary with what you're doing with open source ecology. But I'm trying to kind of intermodulate with my own open house party program, but also with what I'm kind of doing at work. But just kind of create a few points of contact to expand with other communities, common platform technologies.
Yeah.
And I'll let you have the talking again.
Yeah. On OpenPLC, just a technical question: what hardware can it run on?
From what I just viewed this a few days ago, it seemed like it was an Arduino-based type of module, so some Raspberry Pis and some other specialized hardware equipment. I am not an expert. I just thought it was, I know about open source technology, and I just tried to download it. And of course, being the corporate system, I could download it, which my coworkers were surprised about. Once I executed on Windows, corporate policy was like, no, this cannot happen. So it like automatically rejected me from opening it. So my experience, I'm going to say, is very limited. It's like 2 days worth. So I don't have much knowledge. I just have some enthusiasm as far as exploring it and seeing what standards are available to work with.
Yeah, it does run on Arduino. Just looked it up. Yeah, cool. So regarding the documentation for what we have on...
Can you screen share your computer again?
Say what?
Can you screen share your computer again?
Right.
So I can follow along with you?
Well, regarding the documentation which you said you can find, you can get to the CD Home 4, the CAD, all the specific master files, electrical here. So taking you to the electrical, you can, basically any of these have a working doc and then the corresponding CAD files. So you can go through that in quite a bit of detail. Like for example, here the electrical design, you'll see the entire house with positionally correct outlets and everything. So you can actually, when you 3D print, you can actually, right now we don't have we do have a model where we do have the boxes and the structure in the same house and all that. So you can get into things like, here's an actual model with everything, including the water fittings and plumbing fittings and electrical and the whole MEP, mechanical electrical plumbing, built into it. And for us, the thing is, with the larger printers, we did prototype, just got early stages of prototyping on a 8 by 8 foot print area 3D printer, so you can actually do the actual whole full modules. Now, short of that, you can print a lot of very useful things with just very, very small
I want to interject with you. Have you found the use of enclosures useful, or are you able to do a lot of this stuff without enclosures?
Without an enclosure, you're useless. You have to have heated chambers and high temperature printing. So that's an assumption here.
Okay.
And that's some of the developments. If we're going to roll out this in prime time, like for example, printing with polyethylene, you can do that in an enclosed chamber, not without, or anything of like that. Even ABS and PVC, perhaps, where you'll just get better quality, and as that's just a prerequisite, and that'll be part of the development path for us to do the shredder, do the filament maker, so we actually make the filament part, and then you have the high temperature chambers, which I do want to, like technically speaking, you should take a look at the high temperature printer on our wiki, because we've got a patent-free design that's pretty robust and it's very easy to build. So that's something that we've yet to prototype, but we do have a very good concept design on that.
I'm going to interject again. If you could take notes of things you'd like to kind of show off with what you've been doing, what you've been doing in the past year. When I'm doing my YouTube series, I'd really like to refer to this interview and some of the cool highlights you have.
Yeah,
and I'd like to explore in some of the 3D printer, for example, because with my equipment, I have my professional grade shredding machine, and so I'm starting to get all this filament. I've got a few 3D printers that aren't fully utilized, and a couple of them I wanted to utilize to build some open source 3D printers. I know you have your professional one that's more out of metal. I can't remember if your basic one is a bit more rep type you can replicate with another 3D printer. But as I have this material sourced eventually, or compiled, and I can produce with it, I like to manufacture maybe like one of your base printers of sorts, or most of the parts for it.
Right. Take a look at this link in the chat. That's the high temperature heated enclosure concept, because that hasn't been built, just some CAD and work like that. So that's an important page to study. I won't get into that much more detail. There's another page called, let's see, open source shredder. Now this gets into the no. Open
Something
source.
I'm going to do as well is with my server is I want to have a repository of a safe open source ecology repository and have versions of like this is the repo at 2010, this is the repo around 2020 time, or this past year 2022. But then also have my own mirroring repository where I take some of your works that I really like and I do my own derivatives of it, acknowledging your core base work and where I'm expanding or modifying it, and then maybe sharing it. Well, and keeping it in the public domain, but sharing it with you, be like, "Hey, Marcin, like just so you know, this is like my own repository referencing your works, and this is where I'm making my own advancements on." So similar to like a GitHub structure, you have your core base branch, but then I can do a derivative work of it of my own, but then I can resync it to what you're doing, saying, "Hey, if you'd like, I'm committing this to my own repository. If you find it useful, then you can add it to your own repository."
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I know like as your own organization, you have works that are encompassing what you do with your organization. But whenever you find something useful from a company or another nonprofit organization, I'm sure like with Precious Plastic or WikiHouse or FreeCAD, you refer to it and we incorporate into what you're doing. But you have that core work that is your own entity, but that own like one that's more of like a shareable or acknowledging what's in the public domain and kind of hosting that. So that's what I'm trying to do kind of with my server is acknowledging versions of updated repositories of other people, but then also showcasing where I'm mirroring that repository and doing my own derivatives. That way it allows for more of an organic exchange of developments.
Yep, exactly. I mean, you're saying the meta overview of this. So I'm sharing my screen on some of the older work on a shredder. This was like 20, what is this? Where are we at? Like 2020 or something? But we 3D printed these belts and gear downs that were actually pretty impressive. So you can get to high torque using just 3D printed parts, including 3D printed bearings, which is amazing. And then we went to, this is like, okay, your desktop kind of a scale, but what if you talk about industrial grade shredding? Then you got to go to hydraulic motors like we use on our tractor, which were more like, let me see if I can just get you some pictures there real quick from, that was in 2020 in the summer. I just want to scroll through to there. Like some of the stuff we did on 3D printers, this is like the 18-inch bed scale, so we were thinking, okay, we got to start printing our own, making our own filament, because then the prints get so big that it gets really expensive. So we said, okay, let's take the hydraulic motor wheels, like the same hydraulic motors that we have on these wheels, and do something that looks more like industrial grade shredder, which was from the Summer of Extreme Design Build 2020, which is, I want to just show you some pictures. We never finished it, but I just want to show you a picture of what kind of scale we were looking at. So this is the summer, this is some of the summer, this is where the summer starts, where we were building the house, the first CD, well, that was the CD home too. Then we got into the machines part, where the industrial grade shredder, well, take a look at this. That's a tractor kind of a thing that we were building with that same hydraulic motor. But that same hydraulic motor, because you see this product Ecology where we use those motors in many applications, but one of them was something that looks like this. This is our shredder. How much can this shred? So this is actual drive. You're talking about 10x of the precious plastic shredders. And we were going for an industrial grade one that can be powered with up to 80 horsepower. So we started on that. Here, let me just show you, just to finish that discussion before I interject. But as far as we got there, we got to, let's see, any more pictures on that? This was the house finishing. Not sure I have any more pictures outside of a little titillation there, which shows that, no, I'm not sure we took any more pictures than that. We actually cut some blades for that shredder with a CNC torch table, like here actually. Here, yeah, those were the kind of blades we cut out. That's just a profile of that blade from FreeCAD. But that's the torch table we used to actually cut out those blades. So we did another prototype with that. But yeah, I don't have much on the shredder except that these were the hydraulic motors we used, and as you can see, that's 100-weight chain, and that's pretty heavy. Anyway, I'll quit at that. That's because we never did finish that shredder. But the idea there is that's the equivalent of the kind of shredder from precious plastic that we were thinking about. Okay, well let's scale that for when we actually got to get enough material for an entire house. This is what it would look like.
Okay.
Which is common ground. It's
yes.
The shredder infrastructure. That would be a great piece of common ground. So we came to an hour already, so maybe we can start finishing up. But I mean, the point is that what I showed you is just like a rundown of just a few of the things we're doing. And of course, there's a whole history of this, and you can start by maybe review some of the links I sent you, and maybe pick one and say, okay, let's dive into this, because each one of them is, a year.
Yeah, an hour probably.
Yeah.
I think I remember what I was going to mention. At work, I work at Conagra Brands, and sometimes they have different versions of motors or different versions of VDF systems,
variable drive.
Variable frequency drives, VFD, yeah. And so, anyways, even though it's not the same exact part, it's a different version, and it can be kind of plug and play. And unfortunately, it's for better or for worse, it's industrial grade, so you're kind of locked into certain ways of doing things to an extent. But within like that PLC system, for the most part, it's usually plug and play. I mean, there's a lot of things that are old or outdated. But the cool thing about open source with like these public libraries and your developments is there's quite a bit of plug and play that's possible. Although I'm sure, as you're aware of, like in a more business setting, you want to have like a finished product and have a completed encapsulating the completion of a project when you do something that's more marketable. So for me, being that I'm working with a few peers and kind of small at the moment on the nonprofit side and by myself mostly on the for-profit side, I'm trying to focus on small scale and acknowledge works like your own on a small scale of development that I can handle, or WikiHouse. And I'm hoping, like, as I engage online and showcase my developments and develop my repositories referring to that, I can maybe explore further on to some of those subcategory libraries, and see what the next point of the process is. Because I know, at least for myself, sometimes I bite more than I can chew, and so I'm trying to work on like small things that I can make progressive modular progressions with, or versioning that's something I can handle within a set time period. I know in your workshops sometimes you have it where you want to do a really cool workshop, but things happen along that process that kind of stifle things, or else it creates a lot of stress maybe with the group. But if you can have a complete project, I know, like with your 3D printers, I think that's really cool when people can have like a completed product and take home and see where their piece, the puzzle, fits in with like your long-term work. I think it's really awesome that you're doing this industrial grade stuff, but I think for some of the workshops, for some of the people that might not be quite as hardcore, if they can have just a smaller product to take home and just develop further with which a 3D printer is a great example for, then allows them to kind of get a taste, completed development in a way of helping or maybe working with you further. There's a lot of development that can arise from having a 3D printing machine or some other manufacturing type product or focus on. For me, like another subcategory I want to try to work on is like car chassis. So there's like the open source vehicle, there's the rally fighter, I think there's the Velo car that York was working on, as well as I forget the other company organization you referred to in your earlier days. But like with my open house party program, I kind of like to refer to like that as its own module with like the car stuff, and just explore the Velo car. I forget the name of the company organization you were originally starting with as well. But then there's also the Rally Fighter from I forget that company's name, and open source Tabby. But just smaller projects you can do to completion, but can be like scaled up at a further workshop later on. So that way you finish a product, people can take something home, but then you can really whet people's appetite for that library that's being developed for a bigger production development.
Yeah. Yep.
But I'll just slow down because I know you are wanting to run on time, and I don't want to overwhelm you if you are feeling some burnout from the conversation, but if you're going to have another interview, I'd love to expand on one of the other subcategories at a later time.
Yeah, yeah. Let's set that up for another time. There's just to add to the category of cars. Look at the frame model, and the work on a MythBuster car by another guy who's an open source fanatic. Take a look at that. His whole story there, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so why don't you take a look at what will be most relevant for next time, and let me know.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Well, I like the discussion that, I mean, you're basically trying to provide the framework. Here's like this whole bigger picture of open source product development, which not a lot of people are doing. Like you're one of these rare freaks like myself that are actually trying to pursue that in a coherent way. I mean,
manageable as well.
Say it again.
Manageable as well, and I'm going to interject again.
Yeah.
Peer of mine was also a bit combative in what I'm doing. They admired what I'm doing with the open source development, but also, for better or for worse, from an academic standpoint, if you give away your knowledge, then you also, in some cases, impede someone's way of living to an extent. And I know that's a very debatable issue because you can debate it both sides to an extent, but it can be a bit of contention in working with people when like it kind of erodes from their business model in some ways. So that's not something I want to harp on you on, but I've kind of been harped on myself about that conflict of interest of open source versus like survival, making a living of what someone else's business model is on. And when you start doing that, like in the for-profit industry, like say GM and Ford or something else, there can be a bit of tension with that market value. Or sometimes on an unhealthy version, there's nonprofits competing. Ideally, on the healthy version, it's finding common ground and collaborating to create more value, not take away value.
Exactly.
So that's something that I have to recognize because not everyone wants to do open source stuff. And there's some things that I don't necessarily also want to do open source stuff. Like, for example, with the for-profit, when I'm taking out a lot of debt or trying to utilize that for my private benefit, because there's a difference between like nonprofit rules and for-profit rules. I think a big issue for next time, not this time, but next time, is with my nonprofit side, I want to make sure I'm IRS compliant because there's public testing. And so I think one of the things I want to talk with you about is how you've gone about through the process of like public testing and staying compliant with IRS rules and meeting those tests of sorts. Because my 5 years is coming up due this year, and I have to have a certain level of public funding. I'm finally getting some donations actually as of last year, but I just wanted to kind of garner your past senior experience with staying congruent with those public demands and some of the timeline stuff with IRS or else just in general. And also as a nonprofit, like you have your mission, but you want to improve people's well-being, I'm pretty sure, and leave your own mark. And to some extent, you have to cater to your audience or your the people you serve. And for me, just kind of garnering more experience in like how to scope, limit who you're going to serve, and to make sure it's an enjoyable experience or an enjoyable workshop, so people want to come back and feel like they're a part of the community and creating ongoing value that's sustainable and lasting and makes a lasting impact.
Yeah.
Because there's some of that social dynamics that comes with experience that I'm sure you're a bit more well versed on. So once again, it's not enough time to go over it now, but just that was a big issue I know I wanted to have with you when we had our meeting. Just some of those nonprofit rules and just some of your experiences, some of the challenges and struggles with that.
Yeah.
I'll just stop down before I take up too much of your time.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'm good with setting up another meeting, and I don't want to take too much advantage of your time. So if you want to close the meeting, we can. So any last words?
Yeah, no, there's a lot to this, and the promise of open hardware is still to be delivered. So that's a long path, but we're on it. I think that the way it comes out, we want to show that with the Cited Home, you can resolve for many people that, oh, it's actually open and it makes a lot of money and it makes serves a lot of people. And that's the simplest answer. People start getting into an abundance mindset, which no longer is win-lose, but it's win-win, and we show how.
Yes,
by being transparent and open.
One thing I might be a bit more differentiated with you on is I'm wanting to more focus on well-being. So for me, like I acknowledge like your libraries. Oop, I only got 10 more minutes left. It's acknowledging your libraries with yours and WikiHouse, for example, for affordable housing, and kind of exploring that regards. So things that serves, like with your server, having the design in the public domain, people like myself can reference that in improving their own well-being and meeting their own basic needs. And so that's something that's a bit more, a little divergent to focusing solely on open source hardware, but your hardware definitely serves a purpose. And that's what I really enjoy about it, because it helps me myself for peace of mind in building my own home estate. And I'm running out of time, so any other last words, or do you want to?
Yeah, let's call it at that. There's a whole discussion about that point, so save it for the future.
Sounds good. All right, well, you enjoy your weekend, what's left of it, Marcin, and thanks again for the interview. And if you could just send me this video recording on the mega file link I sent you,
Okay.
and I'll post it, and you're free to post this. You have my consent to post this on your site, and
Yep.
it's for an enjoyable interview. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Chaz. Keep going.
Thanks.
Talk next time.
Yes, take
Bye.
care. Bye.